Now to follow up on the Russian, update with 5 people, being killed in Ukraine. Joining me now from Montreal, Canada, is an intelligence analyst, Malcolm Nance. We will be discussing the continued attacks on, Ukraine by Russia or the Ukraine-Russian war. Good to have you join us from over there now. What's your assessment of the continued counterattacks in the region, that is between Ukraine and Russia?
Well, the first thing we need to make clear is that Russia itself, as an attacking army, is really doing poorly. I mean, we're coming halfway through the summer season, and they've managed to carry out virtually nil attacks that have done more than taken a few, kilometers of space. Russia is being attrited far faster in terms of losing manpower and equipment than the Ukrainians are. The Ukrainians are on the defensive, and they are doing quite well at damaging the Russian operations. But Russia also has this campaign of attacking Ukrainian cities just to kill civilians and actually wasting military resources that could be used on the battlefront. So as of now, that we have a situation that's pretty much still in stalemate. The Ukrainians are attacking Russian cities now with drones in the exact same way that Russia is attacking Ukraine.
To, reference that with regards to the last comment you made with, Trump supplying weapons now to Ukraine to ensure that it defends itself.
Well, Trump is a strategy that can turn on or turn off on a dime. As you know, he is very closely aligned with Vladimir Putin. And when he came into office, within the first couple of weeks, his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, actually turned off weapons shipments to Ukraine. This has put Ukraine in a situation where they are actually shifting their dependence away from the United States, who has now become a spotty partner, not the reliable partner that they had been since the beginning of the war, and are now relying more on the European Union. German and European companies like Rheinmetall have built artillery shell factories in Ukraine now. And the only thing they really need are the Patriot missiles to defend their air defense. And that is the one thing that Volodymyr Zelensky has been playing nice with Donald Trump over. He made a proposal to get $50 billion of European Union money to buy interceptors that would stop hypersonic missiles from smashing into their cities. So that being said, Donald Trump has a strategy that is about Donald Trump. And if Zelensky displeases him, he'll change on a dime.
Now, Malcolm, explained to our audience how such attacks can be devastating, because it's been, over 3 years now, and it's beginning to seem normal. So how dangerous can these drones be? What impact does these have economically? How do intelligence and defense operations play out in regional conflicts?
For Ukraine, the mission is to defend all of their land to the best of their ability and to try to keep these weapon systems from attacking civilians. As you know, there are 3 types of weapon systems that the Russians employ. The first is hypersonic missiles that are launched from strategic bombers and aircraft like the MiG-31. And those fly at very high speed and generally are targeting air defense systems and high-value systems around the city of Kyiv. The Patriot missile system we have is very capable of shooting those missiles down. Next comes cruise missiles and ballistic missiles that the Russian army launches. They go up into space, they come down into Ukraine, and they also are supposed to be used for high-value targets, but we've seen an increasing use of these with cluster warheads just to kill as many civilians as they can, which is confusing because Russia really needs all of these weapon systems to try to overcome Ukrainian defense. And as you see in the video, you're looking at an assembly facility for the Russian Shahed drones that they have that are of Iranian build. They're now building them in Russia. They're very slow. They can fire them by the hundreds every night. And Ukrainian air defense manages them with small arms and anti-aircraft guns. But as you see, sometimes they're very low, they're very slow. They're akin to the World War II V-1 buzz bomb, and they get through. They can get through. but they are also being targeted at civilian facilities. So while Vladimir Putin has this strategy of trying to damage the Ukrainian armed forces, over half of his attacks are spent trying to kill Ukrainian civilians. And if you're spending 100 missiles or cruise missiles and drones every night, and you're killing 5 or 6 random civilians in a country of 42 million people, it's just to satisfy his bloodlust.
Well, as you know, I'm happy you mentioned, the Trump and what he had planned earlier, but, he imposed a deadline of 50 days on the war from July the 14th to 2nd of September, upon which sanctions put together by Lindsey Graham will begin, by the U.S. So does this deadline mean anything, and how can this impact the war?
That deadline is utterly worthless. Let's just be frank. Moscow has invested the whole heart of their country into seizing Ukraine. And first, let me tell you how big Ukraine is and how poor Moscow has done. Ukraine is 18 hours of nonstop driving at 150 kilometers per hour from end to end, from the Polish border to the Russian border. The war is in the last 30 minutes of that 18-hour drive just in the southwest portion of that country. He has no capacity to win this war in the conventional sense. Moscow has already lost 1 million troops killed or wounded. The problem that they really have is that the United States is imposing this unrealistic 50-day deadline because in Donald Trump's mind, this is not about assisting Ukraine. He has had it in his head that he should deserve the Nobel Prize if he could stop this war. This war is not stopping in 50 days. I find it unlikely to stop in the next year unless the Russian line cracks or something dramatic happens that impacts the battlefront.
Now, with your last statement, what do you think could happen to make Putin, back down on this, counterattacks and, civilians being killed in this war?
The thing Russia really should fear is that they're very close to economic collapse. I mean, complete economic collapse. Yes, they still sell oil. Yes, they export natural gas. Yes, they have raw materials that are going around the world, but they do not have the capacity to build things like they did in the Soviet Union, which was a policed communist state, right? They could force you to build things. The average Russian citizen who is military age does not want to serve in this war. The pipeline of going from Moscow to the Ukrainian front is about 2 weeks. The survivability rating is less than 75%. I mean, it is not good. So for Moscow to win this war, something dramatic would have to happen on the battlefield. And they just do not have the capability of making that dramatic push. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, could in fact wear down the Russians, break through on the battlefield, and using all of these Western weapons and their modern skills in warfare, could in fact break the Russian army to the point where they would have to withdraw that 50 to 100 kilometers that they're in Ukraine back to the Russian border.
Okay, thank you so much, Malcolm Nance, for your take on this. We have a little time to discuss this, but then again, we'll revisit later in the future. He's intelligence analyst. Malcolm Nance joined us from Montreal in Canada.